We want to do a video today of talking about planes, and so it's going to be kind of plane terminology, use, and troubleshooting, and I'm going to do that today. I have a better setup for the camera. I'm by the light, so this should look better than most of the other videos. So I'm going to try pretty hard today, make this video pretty good. This is plane, again, use, troubleshooting, terminologies, things like that. So this here, you can see back here, it's a number 5. This is a Stanley. Now, to tell what plane it is, you see in the front, we have Bailey, which is a good indication of Stanley, but also we have Stanley here. And if you can see up here, it says Stanley up here along with the grinding angle. And that grinding angle is just how you sharpen the plane iron. This is a plane iron and not a blade, so I guess that's one thing. So this is the iron. This here in front is the level cap. See, and that's how this functions over here, is it's actually just pushing that down, which is why it's called a level cap. And again, that's where we see Stanley on the front. Then we come in here. This here on top, this curved piece, this is the chip breaker. And then this again is the plane iron. Now the plane iron is up here with the edge. That's what's actually doing the cutting. And so these two are connected by these two, by this screw. These two are connected by this screw here. Take that apart, you come in here with a screwdriver, loosen that up. You can either take that all the way out, or you can leave it in and kind of twist it around and break it apart. So again, this angle here, if you look up here where it says the grinding angle, it's on the other side. See right here? The grinding angle, it's not focusing, but that's the angle here. So that is a 25-degree angle, is basically what that's telling us. And so a troubleshooting tip here is if you're having a very hard time taking a shaving, and if the shaving is coming out wrinkly and kind of bunched up. I have an example of some shavings. Give me a second. So you see this shaving here. Let me get around the camera. This shaving here, you see it's long, smooth. It kind of curls up, but it's not bunched up. It's not funny. You know, you might get a shaving and it's all bunched up and curled up like that. You know what I mean? And it might be catching kind of inside the plane, and you have to pull in here to try and get that out. That's happening because your chip breaker and your iron are not seating. So what you're looking for is these two, where the chip breaker hits the iron. You want that to be a perfect seam. If you look down the edge like that, you don't want to see any light coming in from behind the chip breaker. These two should seat very well. To do that, you're gonna flatten this side and then around this side over, and you can do all of that just with a file in your vise. So that assumes, again, you have a flat iron, but you usually don't need to flatten it all that much. People do, and I don't think it's all that necessary. But again, these two should seat, and there should be no light visible coming in from behind here. If there is light visible, you're going to want to file this edge over, and then once those connect, you're just going to round this over. Now, that should be pretty round, you know, there shouldn't be any bumps or whatnot, but it doesn't have to be, you know, smooth. You don't have to buff that out. It just has to be pretty smooth so that the shaving won't actually catch. When you're putting these two together, you want it to be pretty close. Now, it's dependent on what the plane does, but this is a jack plane, and so it kind of does everything. So you just want this to be pretty close, maybe a 1/16 or a little bit less than a 1/16 of an inch. I don't know, what's that, a millimeter, 2 millimeters? Metric nonsense, right? So we're going to connect that together. You're going to try and screw it in. It won't go any tighter. Don't try and tighten it past that point. Now remember, the chip breaker will always go on the flat side of the blade. You don't put it on this side, right? You don't put the chip breaker here. You put it here. Then we come back into the blade. This is the lateral adjustment mechanism. This is the frog. This is just the whole piece here is the frog. This here adjusts this level here, which adjusts the height of the plane. So that's kind of a depth adjustment screw. This here, you tighten this or loosen that to change how tight the level cap is. Now, talking about the frog, if you look down the frog like this, when you look down the frog and into the mouth of the plane, that should be perfectly flat, and you shouldn't be able to see the mouth of the plane. Right, the mouth of the plane shouldn't stick ahead. of the frog, and the frog shouldn't stick a head over the mouth. Those two should be in line, just like that. So again, you do that by loosening up these screws in here, and then sighting down the plane. And then once you have it pretty well adjusted, that's that. Now, to adjust that, what you're going to need to do is, again, loosen these screws, and then back in here, see that screw in there? That screw will move the frog forward and backward. So you're going to have to take the handle off, and then you're going to have to adjust that screw in and out to fine-tune your plane. Now, usually that comes pretty good from the factory, but if you're giving a plane a tune-up, you will want to check that. The handles, you should tighten up the handles. That's this screw and this screw here. Or depending on the make and model of plane, there may not be a screw in here, and it will only be this top one. So just check what you have. And that's that. Now also in some older planes I can show you. Like this plane here is actually from about the 1800s. It's a very old plane. Kind of, late 1800s. This is the Stanley 180. You can see the handle is actually cast into the plane, so you obviously don't have to do anything to the handle. It is what we call a bedrock plane because it does not have an adjustable frog. And many people talk about bedrock planes thinking they're better than a plane like this with the adjustable frog, and basically what that means is this frog is cast into the plane, into the body of the plane, which is here, and it can't move, and they think that's better for whatever reason, but really it just leaves you less adjustability, and with a well-adjusted frog there's really no difference. And so again, this here is the sole of the plane, this is the mouth, then you have the toe and the heel. That's that. And obviously other handle. Now different companies have different handles. Those are pretty standard handles. With someone like a Veritas, they might have a little higher up of a handle, might be a little bit bigger. This is obviously a newer plane, so it has kind of cast, almost a plastic handle, but I do have a couple with wooden handles, and there's really no difference. So that's that. So one piece of troubleshooting I said was that possibly either one, your blade is not sharp. Make sure that blade's nice and sharp. I sharpened a 2500 grit and then hone, so I'm still not even going as high as many people do. Some people go to 16,000, but you really don't have to. Make sure you fettle the chip. You want to maybe look up fettling chip breakers, which is making these two fit very well so you don't get any light. You're going to want to check that frog, and then also the depth. So again, this goes in, screw down, chip breaker up into here. You're going to see this little rectangle is going to fit into that lever I was talking about before. You're going to want to see this here raises the plane up. You can see that moving underneath there. Oh, that was not seated properly. That was your issue. And then we're going to come back in here now. This should fit well, and then it should be kind of tough to do with one thumb. So if you hold your thumb like this, there should be a pretty good amount of resistance there just with your one thumb. And then we're going to look down here. We're going to use this lever here. We're going to move that back and forth until we see that this here is pretty straight across. Now usually you don't want to put a square to that. It doesn't work as well as you'd think it does. And then some people can actually then they can sight down the plane like that. They can sight down the sole of the plane, and they can actually see how far out that blade is protruding. But I just like to put it to a piece of wood and do it that way. So that's this plane again. Setting it up, you're going to want to check your frog. You're going to want to check your blade, make sure the chip breaker's fettled, and make sure that it is sharp. You're going to want to make sure this is tight enough. That's good. Again, this shouldn't be too tight because then you won't be able to adjust the height. If this is too tight, you won't be able to spin this to adjust how deep the iron should be. So I'm going to grab another plane and show you a couple different types of planes, and then what you're going to want to look for in that plane. This plane here, although not a Stanley, it's cheaper than a Stanley. It's a little bit shorter. It's you know, the handle's much thinner. This is a cheaper plane, a little bit older too. But what I've done to this one is I've actually turned it into a scrub plane, which you can see, should be able to see. There's actually a round to this iron. The iron is not flat, but it has this round to it, like that. And that way it removes more material faster. So this is for rough stock removal. You can also take off a lot more material with this. You can set this to maybe get a 32nd or even a 16th inch of material. And in that way, you can take some stock down very quickly with this. Again, this has wood handles, but they're not very high quality, but it does have wood handles. Irons are the same. They're all pretty much at the same angle. Now, both the ones I've shown you so far, both of these planes, have both been numbered 5s. Now, a plane like this, now this is a Craftsman, but I have a Stanley blade in it. This is much older, obviously, as you can see. This is a number 4 plane. Now, it also has a fluted sole. That basically means less resistance, it's a little bit lighter, and it's much easier to flatten. Now a plane like this, much smaller, again this is number 4 plane, these are number 5s, so a plane like this is most often going to be used as a smoothing plane. And what that means is you're going to have a very thin shaving being taken by this one. So the scrub plane was the thickest shaving. This guy is going to be, you know, kind of in between as far as that shaving will go, and this is going to be the thinnest shaving. So people use these for, you know, end grain on shooting boards, and mostly just smoothing out a piece of work. Now then I have these 2 planes as well. Now these are 2 different planes. This is a block plane, which will function the same way as any other plane, except this is a lower angle. You can see actually the difference on these 2 planes. You can see the iron here is at like this, and this iron is coming in much lower, which means this is better for end grain. This being a lower means better for end grain. There's also no chip breaker, as you can see, on that edge. This is adjusting the side. This is the lockdown mechanism, but otherwise the same thing as any other plane. This is actually again a very old Stanley rabbiting plane. This is a very early plane. You can still put a fence on it here, I believe, but really it's meant to use a batten. There's no lateral adjustment, there's no depth adjustment. To set this one, you'd take a hammer, a plane setting hammer, a screwdriver, whatever, and you'd tap on the blade to either move it in or move it over, and then you'd tap on the nose of the plane or the back of the plane to shock the iron back in. Now there's no chip breaker here, but you can see that the level cap functions as a chip breaker down here. So again, most of them function the same way, but they serve different purposes. Now I'm going to show use and setup, and then that should be pretty much it.